Now I'm going to pass it over to Phin, who's going to take it from here and use his breadth of experience to talk more about how you, as HR practitioners, can build empathy with your managers and get out of your own way to help enable them and build the capabilities that they need to be successful. So over to you, Don.
Welcome, everybody. This is Phin. I'm pretty pumped to be able to speak with you today. I love what Arshana said about engaging managers. And my presentation, I'm going to call it today, You Got This, all right? So we're going to have to take our work from the understanding and the knowledge we have to actually application. And that's always the most challenging part, isn't it? So a little bit about my background. 2 seconds before we just run through things. I've done a lot of LinkedIn training, so I've got 10 HR-related titles on there. The last I looked, they've been watched roughly 320,000 times around the world, so that's pretty cool. I'm an employment lawyer in California by trade, so talk about, you really got to know your employment law in the United States if you're in California. And I've also run a lot of HR groups. I ran one of the first mastermind groups in the United States of top-end CHROs in California. And I also built an HR company that I sold to Think HR. I do a lot of coaching of HR executives. So my last 35 years has completely been within the HR environment. So this is what I've learned about taking on projects like this and getting them into fruition. So we're going to talk about 5 things here over 20 minutes. And the first one is it all begins with your engagement, all right? The second one is we want to get clarity, and the best way to have clarity with those managers is through agreements. The third thing is to realize that we may have some fears or blockages, and they may have some fears or blockages in ways. Let's try to get an idea of what they are and get them out of the way so they don't ruin our success. Then the reality is you can only take on so much, and you don't want to be overcommitted, so we've got to reduce some of our activities and expand our bandwidth. And last but not least, we want to have fun with these things. And one way to have fun is to brand it, okay? So those are the 5 things we're going to go through. Now, the first thing is, this whole business about engagement, I get a kick out of it, whether it's the Gallup stuff that's been around, the Glint stuff, the things that have been out there forever about engagement. And it's always as if it's about them. It's about the employee. It's about the manager. And to me, engagement is as much about you as much as it is about them. As a good Buddha said, what comes to you comes from you, right? So if we want our managers to be more engaging with the people they manage, guess what? We've got to be more engaging with the managers that we work with, right? So this inside out job of engagement, pump our own stuff up, right? So how do we pump ourselves up? Well, here's a couple of ideas. First of all, this is a crazy time right now. We've got to take care of ourselves. We can run into some complacency right now. The fear has drained us for so long, we can almost surrender. We've got to watch nurturing our own self in the middle of all this. It's very hard to take on an engagement initiative if people don't feel nurtured. Part of the engagement has got to help people get back to connecting with themselves, right? So this whole business of taking care of yourself, both physically, mentally, emotionally, eating right, sleeping right, all those types of things, job number 1 for your own engagement. Now, number 2, when I teach about emotional intelligence, I put it into 4 quadrants. The quadrant 1 is the inside conversation we have with ourselves. And that is so important when we bring out an initiative like this. Yeah, I get the intellectual thing that's, this is a good idea, we ought to be doing it, but what's my self-talk about it? Why do I want to do it? What motivates me about it? How well do I know myself in implementing something like this? What have been some of my challenges in the past? Where have I been really successful in the past? So that knowing yourself very well, again, the inside out type approach. The third thing is to make sure that you're strategically aligned. I've had the chance to do a lot of workshops with CEOs. I've done over 400 CEO-based workshops, and a lot of times they'll bring their HR person with them. And I want to show about this alignment thing. And so what I'll have them do is I'll have the CEO who manages that CHRO write down the 3 most important strategic objectives for the HR department. Then I'll have the HR director, CHRO, whatever title you want to give them, they write down the 3 most important strategic objectives to the HR department. And then they go like this. and they have never once matched. And I take that back. They matched once, but they weren't in the same order. It's the only time I've had the same three things on both page. Sometimes you're only lucky if you get one out of the same three things on the same page. So what we want to make sure is that when we put together a program like this, we're doing it in alignment with those strategic objectives and not guess about what they are, but get to agreement, as I'll talk about in a minute, agreement about what they are. All right. Now, everybody's running 75 miles an hour. Everybody's feeling overwhelmed. Many people are feeling underappreciated. Most of the HR people I know are overwhelmed, underappreciated, and it can be really draining for all of us. So when we're like that, our self-talk is, yes, I care about the people around me. I care about that management team. I care about those employees. I care about my team. But we don't show it. One of the most powerful books I read was called Leadership and Self-Deception. And the self-deception is that because our self-talk is that I'm a caring person, that's what I actually exhibit to people. So we've got to show people, proactively think about how we show these managers that we care about them. Because if they don't think that we care about them, they're going to just feel like some kind of tool in a game that they don't want to participate in. All right. There's no connection there. All right. And the last thing is we want to allow for creativity because this is not exactly formulaic. We have to fit the circumstances. You know, we have to come up to the what I call the 40-yard line with our ideas. You allow the manager to come up to the 40-yard line with their ideas. And the room in the middle is where we co-create through dialogue and we actually get to agreements and things like that. So those are the 5 ways that you can pump up your engagement. Now, I already mentioned a little bit about this business about expectations to agreements. You know, let's not live in a world of expectations. You will notice that the most frustrating things that you encounter with the people that you manage or with your bosses or with your spouse or with your kids is that they somehow didn't live up to your expectations. Okay. I think we probably have that frustration on a daily basis, you know. Heck, the person driving next to me didn't live up to my expectations. We don't want to live in a world of expectations when we have these direct relationships at work and home. So we want to move to agreements with them. We can't just take these managers through training, through a program, and then just have the expectation that they're going to execute. So what I'd like to do is really get to agreements. Now, we can talk about the whole of the program. We can talk about all of it that's in this program, but we can only really execute on one agreement at a time. And that's why I like to really chunk things down and to kind of simplify them, get to agreements. So far, we've dealt with a lot of logic about all of this. And I remember when I was doing selling, because guess what? You've got a sales job about these programs to the CEO. You've got the sales job about these programs to the management team. And people are going to say, oh, you're trying to introduce change. And change is scary for many people because they may be found out as not competent under the new regime. They may get trapped in what's known as the imposter syndrome. So I want to acknowledge the reality that I'm going to have some fears going through this. My management team is going to have some fears going through this. And even my boss is going to have some fear like, yeah, I talked you into this, but am I really going to be able to execute on it? Or is it a distraction that's going to cost us money and just cause problems? Right, so we have all these fears and we got to make sure we address them because a lot of this is going to be creativity. And anytime you engage in creative activity, you set yourself up to be judged. I don't write a blog article. I don't do a workshop like this without knowing I'm being judged out there. Okay. You don't deliver a presentation at your company without knowing you're being judged out there. So I want to know what my fears are, what their fears are, so we can not have them secret and silent and hidden and not brought out to the front where we can actually acknowledge them. Okay. So maybe this program won't work out. What could be a blockage to it working out? Let's deal with some of those fears up front. They may be legitimate things that are intuitive that we have to language somehow to make sure they aren't real blockages, right? Because the fear of judgment of somebody, because maybe that manager's fear of judgment that they don't execute, or your fear of judgment you didn't execute, the CEO's fear of judgment that somebody didn't execute. That fear of judgment can paralyze people. Now, I've had the opportunity to do a lot of assessments on HR executives because I coach a lot of them. And this is from a program called Zero Risk HR. I use a lot. But I want you to take a look at the languaging in here and see if any of it could relate to you, all right? So I kid around. HR people try to do everything so rules-oriented. They're like CFOs, rules-oriented. The lawyers, rules-oriented. And we're very good at saying yes and no to black and white. But what's more difficult for us, because we're not artists, we're not musicians, we're not those type of people, we're not creatives types in general, is to come out with our creativity and then be concerned about the judgment. And the way we get past that is to not worry about their judgment. Worry about how you can be of service. That's how you get past this fear of judgment, by staying in a place of service. This program here is to serve these managers. This program here will help serve me doing my job better. This program here will help serve the employees. And if you come from a place of service, you remove the fear of judgment in the process. I love this quote. Paulo Coelho, many years ago, wrote the book The Alchemist, and I've been a fan of his writing for years, and I came across this quote by him, and he said that only the mediocre are ever truly comfortable, right? You don't want to get comfortable. You're trying to find some comfort zone, especially where you won't be judged. That's a career killer, and that's no fun anyway. Acknowledge that you're going to put yourself into discomfort because that's where you grow. You don't grow in the comfort zone. If you want comfort zone, go have a vacation, go on a beach, have a margarita, and you'll be on a comfort zone, okay? But when you come to work, let's get right past that and be willing to live in discomfort. The fourth thing here is to stop doing. Again, most of the HR executives I know are going, doing it. I call it running 75 miles an hour. And they have very little bandwidth to put more in the basket. So now you've got this amazing engagement program. It's pretty exciting stuff, all the stuff we've been learning. And now I'm pumped up about doing this, but I'm already stuff like this. So where am I going to fit it into my day? And I'll never forget when I was about 40 and I was finishing my legal career and starting an environmental nonprofit. I was still raising kids. I got newly married. And I was just sitting on 3 nonprofit boards. And I was over at my buddy's Dave's house, and he's kind of was like a father figure in a way to me. And he had this 10-pound exercise balls and his 8-pound exercise balls. And he brings one over to me and says, put it in my hand. So I'm standing here with the ball in my hand. Then he gets another one of the balls and brings it over. He says, put this one in your hand too. I looked at him, I said, I can't. And he goes, when are you going to figure that out? Dave helped me get to that metaphor that if I'm going to grow, I have to constantly stop doing things before you can take on this commitment, because that's what it is. But you have to stop doing something. So I encourage my HR executives to work 50 hours a week, not a minute more than that. That's expected of a manager, but overworking is ridiculous. Can't be efficient anyway. And out of that 50 hours, there's a bottom 10%. That's called 5 hours. The first thing I would do before I actually try to implement this program is stop doing the lowest 5 hours of work that I'm doing, so I don't put myself on overwhelm and I don't overcommit myself. Because when you overcommit yourself, by definition, you will produce a lie. And when you produce a lie, you are villainized. And here I am trying to do all this good stuff, but I've overwhelmed myself. I'm lying all over the place. And I call that the negative hero. Your intentions are good, but the outcomes are not. So stop doing the lowest value work. Just no mas, okay? There's a languaging as we go through all this that will be very helpful to you. And I first learned it in sales, but I also learned in coaching and encouraging people in general. And the sentence is this. You can say the whole big program, but then let's chunk it down to something we can get into action. Why don't we try this as a first safe step and see how it feels? So you look at the languaging through all of that. Let's try. We're doing it together. We're trying it. It's kind of an experiment. As a first, there's going to be more safe, telling the emotions safe step. And I don't say, and let's see if it works, because it's not the logical I'm dealing with, it's the emotional. I said, let's see if it feels right. Because if it doesn't feel right, people not going to want to do it, all right? So I take that, I don't have to do it if it doesn't feel right. Okay, I feel safe there too. So let's try this as a first safe step and see how it feels. Is a super powerful statement when you're trying to help encourage people to take on new projects. Now, the last thing here is to have fun with this, all right? And to brand it. You know, there's all this conversation about branding to the outside, and finally companies are waking up to the conversation about branding internally. Most companies do very poorly, but some really get it, all right? And this is an opportunity for you to have fun with branding this thing. So what's, from a marketing standpoint, what's your unique selling proposition, your USP? Engagement that works, engagement works, performance to engagement. Just, what are you going to label this thing as? And can you create a logo around it? Some kind of mascot around it, some byline, I kid around here, the few, the chosen, the engaged. What can you get that somebody would like to wear on a t-shirt or put up as a poster? My rule about corporate swag is people have got to want to wear it when they get out of work. Otherwise, it's not cool enough. So we can make something really cool on there. We can run contests to name these things. We can publish it on social media all over the place and really pump it up even further. So most importantly, you can have fun with this, all right? If getting people engaged can't be fun, then it's over for all of us. It really is. What could possibly be more fun than this, than getting people engaged, getting them productive, getting them to be winners, getting them to grow in their careers? Such an awesome opportunity for everybody. So with all of that, here's some of my information. If you'd like me to send you the book, The Truth About HR and You, about my little journey through working with HR people, I will send that to you. Please hook up with me on LinkedIn. And I'm going to now turn it back over to Arshana with that New York accent of mine, telling her, even though I'm out here in San Diego, by the way, I'm coming from San Diego today, Arshana,